Hoop Heads podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hello, Hoop Heads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com. And in the spirit of the holidays, if you're interested in purchasing multiple copies for your coaching staff, team, or program, I am offering several bonuses, like a 40% discount, signed copies, and a private video call with your team. But you'll have to place your order before Christmas. Once again, go to raiseyourgamebook.com for everything you need.
I always tell this story, like the greatest thing, Don Showalter, just a mentor of mine. I'll remember this forever. Here's a guy that's won gold medals, been to the state tournament. But one of my first clinics that he asked me to lead a long time ago when I was a little younger coach, I was leading it and I was nervous and leading other coaches as well. But he was there sitting and kind of taking some notes. And so I go afterwards and, hey, how did I do? Whatnot. And I'm like, what are you writing down? And he just said, hey, I was just writing down some little nuggets that you said because I kind of liked how you said it. And for that experience to have a guy that I respect and who knows way more about the game of basketball than I ever will, just to be taking something from what I did, it just showed me that, if someone like that can continually learn all the time, then there's no way that I should ever stop learning or ever stop growing because there's no way I'll ever know it all.
Coach Nick Schauf has been the head varsity basketball coach at Oelwein High School in Iowa for 11 years. Nick's first 4 years out of college were spent as the varsity head coach in Ventura, Iowa. Nick has worked Snow Valley Basketball School for 18 years, which is something that he considers to be the absolute pure joy of coaching basketball. Nick's passion for teaching the game goes well beyond basketball and is more about preparing his players to become great young men of high character. Please subscribe to the Hoop Heads podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. And after you're done subscribing, leave a 5-star rating and review to help your friends in the basketball community find our show. Grab a notebook and get ready to take some notes as you listen to this episode of the Hoop Heads podcast with Coach Nick Schauf from Oelwein High School in the state of Iowa.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Linsing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel. Tonight we are with Coach Nick Schauf from Oelwein High School in the state of Iowa. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. We're excited to get a chance to talk to you tonight. We want to start out by going back to your early days in the game of basketball and talk a little bit about how you got into the game when you were a kid.
Well, yeah, both my parents kind of grew up playing basketball, and that was a big thing for them. In fact, they went to a 2-year college and just kind of for fun actually played a little college basketball. So I know growing up, they just kind of put really any sort of basketball, football, baseball in my hand, just kind of having me be active. But I don't remember it. I've seen pictures of, the little Tykes basketball hoop that has, one of those Nerf balls or whatever. That's probably how I got the start. But after that, just playing outside, we had a hoop outside, and my dad poured a cement slab in our backyard. Not really aesthetically pleasing, but, my brothers and I have 2 younger brothers, but we just wore that thing out. And so that's kind of how I got my start as a little kid, just from my parents.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme with, a lot of people, your dad or your mom or, somebody in your family kind of has that in them, and then they pass it along to you. So as you were doing that growing up with your brothers, you spent a lot of time. Was your house the house where the neighborhood gathered to come and play pickup basketball? Oh,
yeah. We with that cement slab, we played so many games on that. We had just, one of the regular hoops with a kind of plastic backboard, and eventually that plastic backboard didn't make it a whole lot longer.
You were lowering it than dunking, weren't you? That's what you were doing.
It was one of those we couldn't lower, so we just played on it so much that the backboard broke. And then my dad finally decided to fit the bill for one of those goal setters. So then you could adjust it, and man, we just had epic games of all sort, whether it was dunk competitions, one-on-one. Yeah, everybody came over to our house. We in fact, bracketed out our own tournaments, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and people just come over and it was a blast. We hung up, paper on our back of our garage that, had our right by our basketball hoop to say who won, and yeah, it was pretty fun time.
So when you think about how you used to play, like you said, bracketing out tournaments, having everyone come over, when you see the kids and how they play today at this day and age, does it concern you because they don't get to have that experience of having people come over and do these fun things, and everyone's just playing AAU and everyone's just doing these competitive things that everyone's watching?
It does a little bit. Like, I know there's a ton of advantages for playing at a younger level. You have a little more skill set maybe, but as far as for the pure joy and love for the game and love for competition, I just feel that sometimes it does take away a little bit. My oldest son's in 5th grade, and he plays on a travel team that I also coach, and he plays in the Barnstormers. So we go a lot of places, and it's just it takes away from just, hey, there's no refs here, there's no coaches. You play pickup, and if you win, you stay on the court. If you lose, you may have to sit out for a while. And that just kind of, you lose that competitive drive a little bit because, maybe we just move on to our next game and then our next game. And games start to lose value a little bit, I feel. But, I think if that's the biggest takeaway is that pure joy of just competition and being able to handle things for yourself, as being a teacher as well. I think sometimes parents jump in too quickly to try to save kids or whatnot. And when you grow up, how I did, man, you just rode your bike all over town and you didn't have to worry about any of the other stuff that parents have to worry about now. And you just played pickup and you played baseball and football and those things were just part of who you were, and if you had issues or conflicts, you resolved them with your buddies. And instead of a parent or coach stepping in and saying, "Oh, this is how," you just figured it out. So I think that gets lost a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, I think you hit on a bunch of good points there. I like the point you made about how in a lot of cases, AAU, the positive of it has been that kids have probably a better skill set at a younger age, and I think there's a more of a depth of kids that have a better skill set. Might have been in the past where you might have had one or two kids in a particular grade level at a school that had a good skill set, and now you have that talent pool is much deeper. But I do think that you hit on a couple great things that are sort of the drawbacks, and one is that I don't think you can develop the same kind of love for the game that someone who's our age might have been able to do, where you're playing again on your driveway down at the park and you're just playing with your friends and you're inventing games and you're having dunk contests and you're putting together your own tournaments and you're doing all those kinds of things, versus I'm always in an organized game with the uniform on, with a parent in the stands, with a referee, and I just don't think it develops that same passion for the game that kids had when we were young, at least in my opinion. And then the other thing that I think you hit on there is the fact that games have lost their meaning. I can think back to when I was playing, and every game that I played in junior high or high school or college was meaningful to me. And now I think that kids just play so much, and they play so many organized games that they don't. I mean, my son he's in 7th grade. He's going to play his first middle school game tomorrow. And my goodness, he's played since 3rd grade, played travel basketball. I mean, he's probably played, 200 games. And how does he remember? I mean, he doesn't remember any of them. Whereas I can kind of go back and remember every game of my career. So it's just interesting how things are different. And I'm sure you see that impact, from a coaching standpoint too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, we here at Oelwein, kind of the varsity coaches, and we kind of have an approach where we take over, and we're a small enough school that we just kind of take over the whole entire youth program. So hopefully we're trying to do things the right way. But one big thing is that they do have an improved skill set, and I would agree with the depth 100%. But almost with all these tournaments and games, you would almost rather just say, hey, if you were to spend the time you play in those games 2-3 hours every weekend, instead you were to spend that time just on your own skill development when you and just getting shots up, because at a tournament, how many shots are you going to get up, and instead you put time into it, then in those junior high school levels, man, you're just going to be so much better for it. So it's really a fine line balance. You want to give kids the opportunity to play, but you also realize that there's so much fundamental skills involved that just picking up a ball and going to the park by yourself, that to me is one of the greatest things about basketball, is you don't need anybody else to get better. I mean, you can just go and have a little release and just take a ball and get better yourself and just work on your game by yourself. And that's what I think is special about the game is, you have old guys that still want to try to play because they love it, I think that's special.
Yeah, I think being able to do it by yourself, you talk to people that ended up gravitating towards basketball that maybe played a lot of sports when they were younger. And one of the things that I hear a lot is that, I just could go out and I could do it by myself. I didn't need my friends. And, so often, especially if you're a kid that loves basketball in this case, and it's something that you're driven to do, you don't need somebody else to come over and, throw passes to you like in football, or somebody to pitch to you in baseball, or throw grounders to you. You can just be out, on your driveway or at the park or in the gym, whatever, by yourself, improving and getting better. And I think, to your point, that's something that makes the game special. And it's something that I just don't think that it happens quite as often maybe as it did. So let's jump to, you talked a little bit about, you taking over and kind of as the varsity coach, running your youth program. So can you talk a little bit about what your philosophy is in terms of what you guys try to do and how you try to do it, and what you're trying to impart to the kids as they're coming up through your program, through elementary school and then on into middle school and eventually on up to where you're going to see them on the varsity level?
Yeah, so what we try to do here is really, we understand that, the kids in our program, majority, way more than the majority actually, are not going to go play professional basketball for a living. So we want it to be an extremely fun, especially at the younger age, an extremely fun experience. And so what we do is we actually have our varsity players, JV players, and our freshman players help with the youth program, because there's nothing greater for a kid to come to a practice or come to a workout and their role model or idol that they look up to when they come to the games is right there working with them, and they're giving them high fives. And that for us has just been a really good thing, because our participation numbers have gone up, and it helps those upperclassmen and those older guys realize that, hey, you got to eventually, when you join a community, whether it's through a job or whatnot, you do have to give back. And that's one of the big things that we preach is, hey, give back to your community, because someone once helped you out and someone put you in a situation to help you with basketball. And so we really want to elicit that and say, hey, guys, you got to give back to these younger kids. So that's a big thing we do. We're really focused on fundamentals. Our idea for our local teams is, we're maybe going to play one tournament a month, and we're going to try, and gym space is an issue here, but we try to have 2 or 3 practices a week where it's just fundamental skills and drills, and then fun games to keep them engaged, because I know especially teaching, we're at a battle with technology. We're at a battle with games like Fortnite and whether Xbox or whatnot. We are in competition with that, and developing that fun, saying, hey, put down that controller and just go outside and engage in some physical activity. And it just improves the overall health of the kid, whether they love basketball or not. You're just getting out and being active. I think that improves just our whole community, our whole society, and as a whole makes us better. So
But man, they got to get those skins. They got to get those skins for Fortnite.
I have to get Coach Jason off Fortnite. To
No, wait. So hold on a second. I do play video games as a 32-year-old male of 2 kids, but I do not play Fortnite. I just want to be clear on that statement.
All right, I apologize. Hey, I'm fascinated by the idea that you have your varsity and JV players come back and help with the youth program. So that's one of the things that we used to do here in Strongsville, where we are, back when I was a kid, and it's probably one of the things that I have the most fond memories of as a youth player. Was there's still guys that coached me when I was in elementary school that I'm still friends with, and then vice versa. When I was in high school, guys that I coached that I'm still friends with to this day. And to me, like you said, it just builds that community spirit. It builds that connection between the younger kids in the program and the older kids in the program, and makes you kind of look up to them and want to eventually be part of the program. So can you describe what that process looks like? So when you just said that your youth teams practice 2 or 3 times a week, do your varsity JV players go to those practices and assist with those, or exactly what does that program look like for you guys?
Yeah, so we understand that. On the flip side, our kids are involved in a lot of stuff too. We really promote playing all sports, because I was a big proponent of that when I played high school, playing all sports, being involved in musical. I mean, heck, our guys got done with practice tonight, and 3 or 4 of them went to show choir right after. So we really know that time is an issue, and we want to honor that time. So we really don't burn our kids out too much. We maybe say, hey, can you volunteer 1 time a week, or maybe even 1 time every other week. So we're basically asking maybe 2 or 3 of our kids, program 9 through 12, to volunteer, and just say, hey, why don't you give back once every 2 weeks and fit into your schedule, and come help out. And so usually, for the most part, it's been really outstanding. And even kids say, hey, can I come tonight even though I'm not scheduled? Absolutely. Just because they love it, just because they love giving back. And when we started this, the good thing too is our alumni, once they graduate, they remember those little kids that they coached, and now they become the varsity players, and they're like, hey, how's so-and-so doing? And so it just creates a culture where you have guys giving back to the program, and as they see kind of, hey, I remember that little kid when he couldn't dribble left or right hand, and now they're one of our varsity point guards or something like that. So that's kind of the process we go about it. We don't make any of our kids do it, but we just say, hey, this is a good thing, and this is what we're about. And 9 times out of 10, our kids are signing up and giving back. So it's just been really receptive. Our parents love it, especially at the youth level. With so many things wrong, I think, with youth sports, with kind of parents maybe getting in the way, and coaches maybe not doing things the right way. As an educator, I feel that having those high school kids, there's nothing getting in the way. There's no preconceived notions of ideas about playing time, or coach is only playing his kid, or coach has favorites. It's just, hey, here's our high schoolers working with kids, giving back. Here's our former players coming back and coaching our travel teams. It just creates a better relationship, and the kids kind of listen, and they do what we ask, and it's been a good experience for us.
Yeah, that relationship that you build there between your program, the younger kids, the community, parents, I think there's no way that you can possibly go wrong. And I really wish that more schools, I think that used to be more prevalent in the past, and I really wish more schools would kind of latch onto that in some form. Again, it wouldn't necessarily have to be, as you described, where, you have kids that, okay, everybody's got to participate. You got to be at, every Saturday morning, you got to be here for this or that. But just to have it be an opportunity for kids to be able to go back and give back to those younger, kids who are part of the program and who are going to eventually, move up through the middle school and high school levels. I just think it's a tremendous way to build camaraderie between all the aspects of your program. So I'm super excited, Nick, to hear that there's somebody out there still doing that, because it was such a good part of my childhood and my playing career that I'm glad to hear somebody else is out there doing it.
Yeah, no, and another thing, to piggyback off the youth program, we didn't do it last year, but in previous years, in this, we were kind of discussing, how kids, in Iowa, wrestling is really big, and great if you partake in wrestling, that's awesome. But they can wrestle when they're 3-4 years old, kindergarten, stuff like that, but you can't necessarily play basketball because of the fine motor skills, catching, throwing that's involved in it. So another thing we started that I think is kind of unique, that I got the idea from Wisconsin, the father-son camp that they do, and I know a lot of universities do like a father-son camp type thing. It's maybe a tour of the campus, you get to play a couple games, whatever. But we took that idea to our kindergarten and first graders, and we called it our parent-child camp. And we had meet 3 times. Every single time they got like a popsicle or a treat or something afterwards, but it was only 40 minutes, and we required that the parent come out with their kid and do all the drills with them. So not only did we build like a little bit of basketball stuff, which was not the point, but it involved our parents to say, hey, getting involved in your kids' activities, getting involved in your kids' lives, you don't need to know anything about basketball. We'll help you with that. But just being there and creating that opportunity for them to say, hey, this is another thing that you can do with your child to go through and build that relationship has really been super successful for us, because we just provide the framework, and the parents are out there working on dribbling with their kid. They're working on shooting form, and you just see these parents and kids, their faces, that they just light up when they have that opportunity. So that's another thing that's been really big for us, because again, we're not playing games or doing anything at kindergarten, first grade, second grade level, but those types of activities then will say, hey, we really love this basketball program, this basketball family, and let's continue and have a good experience with it.
Do you have anything along the lines of like the youth coming up and participating in whether it be practices or like one thing that we do in my district? I'm a coach. I coach middle school basketball, and our girls get the opportunity to sit on the bench with the varsity program. Like he lets like 2 or 3 girls to kind of get them to experience it at the 7th and 8th grade level and keep them interested. Is there anything along those lines that you do with like the youth or the middle school kids? So not necessarily sit on the bench with us. We so every grade for boys, we have a certain night where they play at halftime, where they just kind of scrimmage each other, and the parents come and everyone cheers for them. But we invite them into our locker room before the game to experience what that is like. And it kind of gives, so that they're in there for before the game. They go out and sit and watch us warm up, and then we come back in for a little last-minute pregame. They break it out with us, and they actually run on the court before we go out there. And so it's kind of this really cool experience, kind of like if I reference professional soccer. I think they like hold hands with the kid and they walk them out, or something I saw. And but that's kind of what it's like, and that's the only thing we do. But it's really kind of cool, because they get to be in the locker room with us and break it out with their role models.
Yeah, I think all those things that you just described are great, again, ways to be able to engage, especially parents of those younger kids, by getting them out on the court with their kid. And by one of the things that I found with those younger ages, you're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6. Here where we are, we have a lot of soccer. So to the same point of with wrestling, you can throw everybody kind of out on the soccer field.
They just run around.
They can run around and they can kick, and it's hard to tell who's good and who's not, and this kind of thing. Whereas with some of the fine motor, whether it's t-ball or basketball, kids who can't do those things stand out a little bit more. So one of the things that we try to do with our programs, and in fact, I just had a group tonight of about 17 kids. Most of them were probably anywhere from, I would say, 4 to maybe 7. And like we did an hour, and we never took a shot the whole time. We're just dribbling the ball and passing and working with partners and doing different things like that. And what you see is that I tend to every once in a while glance out at the parents and kind of gauge reactions, and you just see that people are, as long as you're keeping their kid active and you're working on skills, parents are happy. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of times, especially if you see different programs, different sports, and sometimes you'll go to an event and you'll see a coach working with 3 and 4 or 5 year olds, and they have, one line of like 20 kids, and they're focused in on 2 kids, and the other 18 are, punching each other in the head and jumping on top of each other and,
poking each other.
Yeah, and running around, and you're just, and sometimes you cringe as somebody, again, as an educator and somebody who deals with kids all day, and then, through basketball, you kind of take for granted that you know how to get them organized and make sure that everybody's active and engaged and has a ball and is doing stuff. And I think it's great that I really like that parent-child, camp idea. I've tossed that around a few times myself, never pulled the trigger on it, but it sounds like it's going really well for you guys. Yeah,
and I know we've talked to other teams in our conference and just kind of shared that little idea with them too. And I'm not sure if they've taken it any further, but it's a way for us to again engage, because parents are a big part of any community, and if you're reaching them and making their experience great for their kid, man, that's just that helps the culture a little bit.
So let's jump into that part of your program right now and talk a little bit about the parents and how you try to engage the parents of your high school program 9 through 12. What are some of the things that you do to draw those parents in once those kids become a part of your program?
Well, and we have a program guide that we have just actually, in fact, this year we've never written stuff down before. We've talked to and had meetings and whatnot, but we kind of established a program guide of what we were about and kind of put it in writing, which helps out a ton. We fully understand that parents are a valuable part to any successful program. But we also understand that sometimes they can be a little bit of a barrier, and we want to create a good relationship, but with a relationship that understands that here's your role in our program, and just like coaches have a role, just like players have a role, and just like officials, so all part of the game. That's what we talk about our players. Not everyone's going to shoot 20 shots a game, but you have a role to play, and it's important, and we try to approach it in that sense. At least this year we did with our program guide. We kind of set here's your role, and here's how you can contribute in a positive way, because you just see schools that are successful, they do have that support and that kind of positive energy flowing from the stands, and parents and community members willing to do whatever to help the experience of the kids be the best that it can be. And I think that's ultimately what it's about. Winning and losing will come, but if the kids are having a really great experience and learning life lessons, I think parents will buy into that.
So what are some of the things that you ask parents to perform in their role? What are some of the things that you're trying to get them to engage in to help support their kid and your program?
So, one quick thing is, they always ask, like, well, what can we do? So we just have them, we try to take like our team meals and stuff off of any coach's plates, because being a head coach now for a while, when I first got in, if you told me in college when I wanted to be a teacher and coach that you would have to manage so many things and not actually like coach, there would be a lot of your time devoted to management. I would say, well, I don't believe you. But now being in it for a while, yep. You fully understand that a lot of your duties are management kind of type things. But one thing we do is we ask our parents to kind of help out with team meals, if there's going to be team meals, team activities, creating those team bonding experiences for our kids. That's something that they're super good at and they care about, and that's a valuable part. We do a holiday 2K tournament where we have all these gaming systems, and the kids get together and coaches, they all pick their team, and we play a video game tournament all day, and our parents help out with the food for that. They support that. We'll have a bowling night. We do even, and I know this may sound crazy, and the first time we did it, it was an experience, but we take our team to do hot yoga, and it's kind of it's a good thing for our kids, but it's a team building. So just those types of activities and those types of funds make the experience really, really good for the kids. But then our parents are able to help out with that. Another thing we put, like, and this is straight from our program guide, that we want them to be a crowd builder, inviting people to our games, bringing people to road games, supporting everybody on the team, not just their son, because if we want to create that good experience for everybody, we want to have that. And the last thing we talk about the role is their son's lack of success in sports or lack of playing time is not an indication of what type of parent they are. But like having an athlete that's coachable, respectful, a great teammate, has great work ethic, resilient and perseveres, that is. And we want to promote all those things. And we're not asking these parents to be the coach or to be the person that is knowing all this stuff about basketball. We just want them to help us raise their son to be a great young man of high character.
So did you do those kinds of things when you first started coaching, or are those things that have, obviously you've probably evolved to some degree, but did you engage the parents in the same way when you were a younger coach that you do now? And if not, do you find that you have many less parent issues than you did when you weren't engaging them in this way?
No, when I was a young coach, you kind of go back to what you experienced as a player. And there was a huge gap. Like, coach, you would never talk to parents. You would never bring them in. You wouldn't really get involved in the community or family's lives. You would just say, okay, I'm your coach, and that's the way it is, and here we go. And the flip side is, as a player, you never had parents talking to teachers or coaches either about like playing time or whatever. They would always just say, well, you talk to coach. And we still want to develop those things, but giving the parents a role just helps out immensely, just because some are confused. They may not understand. We just say, hey, this is your role on our team, and this is how you can help us really make a great experience for your kids, for our players, and for the school in general. So I think that's where I've evolved, is not just setting it up in a way that's very very purposeful, and so far it's worked. I guess we'll see after this year, but this is kind of the first year we just really set up and said, hey, we really want you to take on this role and help us in this area.
Yeah, I think it's never bad to communicate, which is basically what you're doing there. And I think if people know and are aware of what your expectations are for them, I think generally speaking, people will tend to meet it. And then to your point, especially if you have a parent who hasn't been through the process, they don't have an older sibling who's gone through and played on a varsity team or been a part of a program. A lot of times people just don't know what is expected of them or how to act, or sometimes they turn to the person next to them who may not always be the best role model,
right,
for what they're supposed to do. So by giving them a framework of, look, this is what you can do to help make the experience more positive for everybody, your kid, the team, and yourself, I think you've done a great thing to be able to build that in for parents. And I'm sure that they might not express it outwardly to you, but I would guess that most of them appreciate the fact that you're reaching out to them, proactively as opposed to retroactively. Just like as a teacher, people like to hear from you when their kid's doing something good, and not just the one or two times a year when they got a detention or did something they're not supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, a lot of things that we talk about is a direct reflection from teaching to coaching. They're both the same in and of itself. You have to motivate kids in the classroom just like you do on the court, and you have to teach kids just like you have to break down and teach kids individually on the court as you do in the classroom. So I think the two are really connected on how you deal with parents as well.
So to go along with that, when did you know that you wanted to be a teacher and a coach? Was that something that you kind of always knew you wanted to do when you were a kid, or is it something that you thought about as you got into college, or when did you kind of flip the switch and know that, hey, I really want to, I want to go into coaching as my career?
Well, really, as a high school kid, I didn't have any idea of what I wanted to go into until my football coach, actually, Mark Hillerbrand, kind of pulled me aside one day and said, hey, I really think that you would be a good coach someday, a good teacher. And then on the flip side, I had a journalism teacher on the English side because I'm an English teacher now. But she pulled me aside and said, hey, if you're not set on a profession, I think you work really good with kids. Because we helped out with our youth camps and stuff like that when I was in high school as well. But she just kind of made it a point to pull me aside and said, hey, this is a strength of yours, and building that relationships. You have a great rapport with everybody, that you would be good. And so then it kind of put the seed, I guess, in me a little bit to think about that. And so when I went on to college, I kind of had that knack in me that I wanted to coach, and the quickest way to coach, in my idea, was to be a teacher. And so I just had to find the subject area, I guess.
So you ended up with English, huh?
Yeah.
There you go. So as you were going through, and you're in school and you're thinking about where you want to end up, and obviously you played multiple sports as a kid, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep.
So how did you end up? Have you coached other sports besides basketball through the course of your career? Have you always strictly been a basketball coach?
No, I have. I've coached football, tennis, golf, baseball. I've kind of done it all. And then at the youth level, with my kids growing up, you just kind of get thrown into the volunteer role as well of coaching kids in that capacity too. But yeah, I in high school I played 5 sports actually. Played football, basketball, and then my first 2 years I was a varsity golfer, and then I kind of hung up varsity golf. And my junior, senior year, I was a varsity tennis player, and then played baseball as well. So I fully see the value of kids playing multiple sports. In fact, I'm very much against specialization of any kid because, again, those kids, 9 times out of 10, they're not getting that scholarship. They're not becoming professional. And so just play sports to just fall in love with everything, fall in love with competing and having a good time. So, and then transition that way. I feel like, coaching everything too gets wearing at times. So I've kind of scaled back a little bit as I've had kids, and my time is stretched in other areas. But yeah, I love all sports, love watching all sports. And so kind of how I'm raising my kids as well. So.
Have you run into, I know you've been at Oelwein now for 11 years, but have you ever run into at any point during your coaching career a situation where you had a coach of another sport other than the one that you were coaching, where that coach, for lack of a better way of saying it, tried to hoard their athletes and keep them, just playing that one sport? And have you ever run into that kind of situation, or is it you've always had sort of a good relationship with the other coaches where, realizing that, hey, we want kids to be playing multiple sports and we're really willing to share athletes?
Yeah, right. I've been fortunate to really never have had that experience. Some of the other coaches are my best friends here at Oelwein and at Ventura, where I was at before I came here. It was the same thing. Now I do know that does happen, and I really feel that's unfortunate, because if you're in the coaching profession, regardless of what sport it is, I think that your support of each other really helps the school just build a sound, solid program. Our football coach here, is also our girls basketball coach. So we talk all the time about lifting and getting kids in the weight room, but also skill work. Our baseball coach and I do radio for football games. But we also know that during the summertime, because Iowa plays summer baseball, that guess what, our kids are going to be shooting in the morning and playing maybe a baseball game at night. And I understand that, in February, there may be times when our kids leave practice and go throw for 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get their arms ready for the season as it comes up. So I just think the culture that we've built here has been outstanding about sharing athletes. Our music department's really good as well. We just communicate back and forth because we do want our kids to be well-rounded at Oelwein, and so it's really kind of just something that we do here. And something that I'm fortunate to be a part of.
Yeah, that's really, I think, something that is nice to hear, that your programs all the way across the board, including the arts, that it's kid-centric. Because a lot of times when you hear about, or when I hear stories of coaches that, tell their kids, hey, if you want to be on this varsity team, you can only be doing this sport, or you need to be doing this in the off season, and you can't be playing on this other team and playing this other sport. And it becomes so adult-centric as opposed to kid-centric. And I think one of the things that, I hear you saying, and I think it's great, is that, ultimately, again, we all want to have success as a coach. I'm sure you're sitting down, every day trying to figure out how do you win more games. And yet at the same time, we all have to understand that ultimately, as you've said a couple times tonight, kids aren't going to the NBA, kids aren't going to the NFL, kids aren't going to go play Major League Baseball. So how can we make the experience the best possible experience we can for each and every kid? And I think that, again, when you're young, you get an opportunity to experience lots and lots of different things. And when you pigeonhole a kid into one thing, when it's not the kid's choice, that's when you're really doing them a disservice. If a kid really, let's say loves basketball and that's all the kid wants to do, great. But where I get into, having difficulty with situations is where there's a kid who wants to play multiple sports, and one coach in a particular sport says, well, if you want to play my sport, you have to be doing X, Y, and Z outside of the season. And if you don't, then I don't want you to be a part of the program. And that's a shame that, adults put kids in those kinds of positions sometimes. So I'm glad to hear that's not going on where you are.
Yeah, no, and I would definitely speak my mind against that kind of mentality. If ever a coach that I came across, I would just, you would ask him to rethink his philosophy on just why he's doing what he's doing, because it seems for very selfish reasons. And I think the good people in coaching and teaching don't do it because of themselves, but do it because of the kids and because of them wanting to give back and make things better for the community, the kids, and ultimately, like you said, kid-centric. Just focus on making them the best that they can be.
Let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, Alan Stein Jr.
Hello, Hoop Heads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com.
Can you talk, I want to jump back to something you said a few minutes ago about being a high school varsity coach and just the time that it takes in the year 2018 to be a varsity basketball coach, and some of the things. 'Cause I think a lot of people, especially parents, don't always understand some of the responsibilities and things that you have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to be in charge of the program. We all hear the horror stories of parents, sitting in the stands, they're complaining about, this coach and their offense, and, and they forget about the amount of time that coaches are putting in to, again, support their kids. So can you talk about, before we get into some of the things that you're doing on the basketball side of your program, can you talk a little bit about just some of the things that maybe the average person out there isn't aware of that a high school varsity coach has to do today?
Well, I think if you break it up into different seasons of the year, I think it's a year-long thing. The varsity coaches in the summer taking kids to tournaments, taking kids, making them do individual workouts, having them get in the weight room. A lot of our coaches supervise the weight room and then do a skill workout. So that's a thing. So it's not just a seasonal position. It's definitely year round. And then, us teachers and coaches that really want to grow. Like I've been fortunate to work Snow Valley Basketball School for 18 years. In fact, when I was in college at Wartburg, Don Showalter's son, Brent, kind of got me into Snow Valley, and so that's where it started. And Brent and I, really great friends, and just the Showalter family is phenomenal, and just blessed to have that opportunity. But I go there for basically 4 weeks a lot of the time, and to learn, to improve myself. So there's not just taking other kids, but there's also time spent to improve your own coaching philosophies. And then you're always researching to say, okay, these are the guys we got coming back. What's going to be best fit, especially at the high school level, where you don't get to determine what types of kids, what size of kids, what things you have to fit a system. You are basically adapting your system around the players that you potentially will have. And so there's a lot of research and time that goes into that to say, hey, this is, I think, what's best for us, both defensively and offensively. And then once you get into the fall, for us, it's a little bit of a break since we can't really have contact with our kids. We have open gyms, but that's where we also do some coaching meetings and developing our philosophies for the season, because that's where our athletes are playing football or running cross country or doing things like that. And then once the season starts, I know this sounds probably normal for a lot of coaching families, but my wife probably becomes a single parent, and in the morning I wake up and basketball's on my mind, and when you go to bed, basketball's on your mind still. And so that whole progression of the season is wearing. Tonight you wake up and you get to school before sun comes up, and then when you go home, the sun is down. So you just have that time commitment that maybe not everyone sees. From watching film to breaking stuff down to creating practice plans. But again, teachers also understand that too, because they're creating lesson plans just like coaches create practice plans. So and then in the spring, you're figuring out, okay, what do we got next year? What are we gonna build off of? What new thing do we need to start studying? Who do we need to reach out to learn? Because that's a big thing with my coaching staff and myself is I always want to provide them with opportunities to learn. So we usually do a book study every year. So we'll go through a book and kind of process that to build our leadership, to build our coaching styles. But we also want to reach out to experts, whether it's, okay, we're going to run the pack line. Well, who's really good at the pack line defense? Let's research and reach out to them and see if they can give us some stuff to learn from. So that in a nutshell is a lot. And I know I'm missing a lot of things that probably I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, I think that you just give people a window into, it's not just a 5-month basketball season where you're doing things. And to hear you say all the things you're doing to try to grow yourself and improve as a coach and help improve your staff, I think that's something that good coaches are doing all the time, is looking for ways that how can I become a better coach? What can I do to put my team in a better position to be successful? What's the last book that you did for your book study? What did you do last year?
So we just finished Transformational Leadership by Joshua Metcalf and Jamie Gilbert. And so I read is it Pound the Stone by Josh Metcalf earlier. So we just kind of picked up that book, and that's the last book that we've studied going into this season.
What came out of that one? So what were some things that you pulled out of that? I have not read that. So what are some things you pulled out of that?
We talk about that in order to be a transformational leader, that it is really tough, and it's not for the weak-minded, I guess. But what the general purpose for us as a staff going into is that we really need to understand that we have a bigger purpose in mind that goes beyond just basketball. We're we're transforming the kids that we get to see and privileged, blessed to coach. We're trying to transform them into great men, great members of society that will go on and be successful fathers, husbands, just great men of character, and that's what we kind of generally took away from the book. Obviously, we took a few things that we want to implement into our program, but generally, it's just, hey, we gotta focus on the hearts of our players and transform. And have that mindset of like, we're just not here just to collect a paycheck and go through the process because we like winning and losing, or we like the ability to compete. We are way more than just kind of a token coach. We have to get into our players' lives and just say, hey, we're here for you, and that's kind of our purpose.
So as you talk about building that men of high character, how do you go about on a daily basis? What are some of the things that you can point to that you do as part of your program that maybe other programs don't do, that enables you to touch your kids in a way that maybe another coach wouldn't?
I'm not sure we do anything super different, or as far as a nugget here or there. Coach Showalter a long time ago, developed with his USA basketball team mind candy, and I know he did it at Mid Prairie too. So we do some mind candy at the beginning of every practice. It could be a quote, it could be a little phrase, a little reading, and a lot of times it doesn't have to do with basketball. A lot of times it has to do with being a great leader, making good decisions, things like that. So that's a little nugget right at the beginning of practice that we do every day. We have done what we call the circle of love. So we kind of make our players at the end of practice, not every day, but we try to have them circle up and look each other in the eye and say something positive about their teammate. And we usually give them a topic, whether it's, hey, say something you like about them as a person, say something you like about their work ethic, or just in general, what did they do well in practice today? So we do that at times, because I think you hear a lot of the negative and trying to make you a better basketball player, but we try to also focus incredibly well on the positives, like what are they bringing to the table, what do you have, whether you're a player or not, whether you play minutes. Bench players in our program are just as important as the guys that start, because if you have a good core group of just players, then your whole overall program's solid. So that's a couple things we do. Again, with our youth that we give back to, our kids understand that they are more than just a basketball player and a high school kid. They are the figurehead for the program. And whether they like it or not, kind of the whole idea of Charles Barkley not asking to be a role model, they are. And they have to understand that the decisions they make affect not just themselves, but kids are looking up to them. In fact, having 3 young ones of my own, I know that they love being around practice. They love interacting with the players that I have, and it's just been a joy to see these young men that we have own that and say, hey, these guys are looking up to us, and these kids are doing what we do, and so we got to make sure that we are making good decisions. So, and really, it's I know this is kind of cliche, but it's about the relationships that you build with your players. We have reached out to alumni this year, and it's the first year that we did this. But for the first week of practice, I had a different alumni from every class that I've coached here put together a little video of encouragement, not longer than like 2 or 3 minutes, but we played that for the guys to understand that, hey, life beyond basketball is all about what you learn in basketball, and what you learn, the discipline, the sacrifice, the teamwork, those all transfer into when you get a job. And those alumni that created those videos, just kind of as a message of encouragement, I think really hit home with our players. So it goes beyond just bringing in what coaches do and say, but we try to bring in other avenues, other people to speak a message that, sometimes when coaches, you hear them talking all the time and they may say the same thing, but someone else says it, it just hits home because that someone else said it. And so we just try to give them a lot of different experiences.
Yeah, I'm going to pull two things out of there. One, what you just, the very last thing you said, I know before I had my own kids and people would bring kids to me and say, hey, I want you to work with them on this or that or whatever. And, I'd go ahead and do it. And they'd say, I tell them the same thing. You won't listen to me. And I used to look at those parents and think they were crazy. And now, now having my own kids, I completely understand and know what they were talking about way back then. That a lot of times, as you said, it's a different voice that sometimes can have an impact because they hear the same voice so often, whether it's from their parent or from a coach. When they hear something new and novel, sometimes that's what is the final straw that helps that message sink in. So I think that's great that you're bringing in, again, outside voices to help with that. And ultimately, what I hear you saying in the whole thread of your entire last answer basically came down to one word, and that's relationships. And that's the relationships between your kids, your players themselves, the relationship between the coaches and the players, and then the relationship between the players and the greater community, however you want to define that.
Yep.
And I think that it's something that, again, to your point, that it's not necessarily one thing that you do where, okay, we have this one little trick or this one little activity that we do. It's more a case of, it sounds like just day after day, through all the things that you do and the interactions that you have, that you're building those relationships, and that's what allows you to develop the character and teach the life lessons that you want your kids to take away from the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't have those relationships first, then really everything is always, in question. Everyone's thinking about, well, do I listen? Do I not listen? What are they saying? But once you have that relationship, that's the kicker right there. And I'm fortunate to teach in this school where I coach, so I get to see these kids in the hallway every day. I get to interact with them. I kind of put myself out there a little bit because I think sometimes as teachers and coaches, we can get really structured and like, oh, coach is always hard or whatever. Well, they got to see you a little bit in a different light, I think. So I'll have a Bluetooth speaker in the hallway in passing time, and I'll just play 80s rock, 90s hits.
Nice.
I'll just have fun, and they'll think I'm totally weird, and they'll give me this weird look, but they smile afterwards, and just knowing that we're human too, and coaches, teachers, they make mistakes, and they're just people. And so having that ability to hopefully break down some walls too, working here daily, I think helps, because, there's, sometimes you'll play a song that they like, or you'll even say, hey, give me a song next period when we got passing time. I'm gonna play it for you, and you better be walking down. I better hear you singing it, and just having that fun a little bit too lets them know that, hey, coach is there for me.
Yeah, I think back to what you said earlier, kind of how it was, used to be that coach was the coach, and kind of on their pedestal and off to the side and doing their thing, and the players were over here on the other side. And I think now that's one of the best things about, I think, coaching that's changed over the course of the last 30 years or so, is now there's much more about that relationship, the ability to have fun and see your coach, if you're a player, to be able to see your coach as a well-rounded human being, then it's more than just the hour and a half or 2 hours you spend with them on the basketball court, but they actually have a family, they actually have interests, they actually do things. And I think, again, that's what helps build relationships, build trust, which ultimately help you to connect with kids, which enables you to be able to push them a little bit harder, which enables you to have more success on the court. And it all ties back to, you got to have relationships with people, and especially that coach-player relationship is so, so important. I want to ask you this one other thing here about your coaching. That is, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you face as the high school varsity coach at Oelwein? What's the biggest challenge day in, day out, or season to season that you find? Is there one thing that sticks out to you that you're like, man, this is, maybe it's one or two things that stick out as the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I think at not just at Oelwein, I think it's across the board, and it's a challenge for me, but I think a lot of other coaches too. And I have a really good support system of brothers of coaches, kind of with that Snow Valley group that I'm associated with. But really trying to get away from finding your value in wins and losses. I think, as a society, we're always judged on that, and people like, oh, well, how many games did you win, or what, instead of asking what maybe the more important question is, how many lives did you touch, how many players did you help be successful later on, where we're solely kind of this mentality of like, well, if we don't win games, then this and this. Well, as a high school coach, sometimes it can be tough, and I'm one of the most competitive people out there, but something that I've learned and continue to try to get better at is that my value is not determined or whatever by wins and losses, because wins and losses are fleeting. Sometimes you're going to have really great players, and you could be maybe not a very good coach, and you could win a ton of games. And sometimes you're not going to have, maybe very good players, and you could be a really good coach, and maybe you only win half the games, but you overachieved, based on the talent. So, yeah, I think, that is a society, I think, is the biggest thing where we as coaches, in the fraternity is hey, find value in more than just the wins and losses. And by all means, I'm gonna try to beat you every time that we play each other. But understanding there's a bigger picture in mind, that basketball is a game, and it's fun. And I think, when it stops being fun for me, then I think I know that's when I need to stop coaching. And when I stop having fun with players, when I stop building those relationships and just enjoying the preparation and process it takes, then I think that's where, that's where I need to hang it up. But right now, I think that's a challenge, though. I think as a kind of culture in general is this idea that let's solely focus on the end product of wins and losses instead of worrying about the process and what it took to get there. Because ultimately, you learn a lot more from the journey and that process than you do the outcome.
Absolutely. It's a great answer. And I think it also relates to, and I'm sure you'll be able to understand what I'm about to say here as a teacher. One of the things that, I think teachers today find so frustrating is the fact that oftentimes we're measured by test scores, and you forget that there's so much more to teaching, just what we talked about a minute ago with relationships, that there's no way to measure any of those things. And I always tell people that if you think about the coaches or the teachers that you remember the most, the ones that had the most impact on you, they're not the one that taught you the most about basketball and how to pivot or how to shoot a jump shot, or they're not the teacher that taught you about how to find the variable or
the derivative,
or do they're not the people that taught you the technical skills. They're the people that took the time to put their arm around you, get to know you, and really cared about you. And I think that that's something that, as a teacher and as you just said, as a coach, that we really need to be able to measure ourselves by those metrics as opposed to the metrics that greater society oftentimes wants us to measure. So again, I really appreciate you sharing that answer, Nick. I think it was a fantastic way to answer that question about what's so challenging. I want to wrap it up here. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one thing that was really tough for me as a player, I played under a Hall of Fame coach. Bill Fleming was his name, and he was a great coach. But sometimes I didn't quite understand what I was getting myself into, and he taught me a lot about basketball, but a lot about a lot of other things. And I didn't like it at the time going through it, but sometimes when you don't like it when you go through, but then you reflect back when you're older, like I am right now, you realize some of those same discipline and sacrificial things that they talked about and how hard they were on you just made you mentally tough, and then also gave you the ability to handle what life was going to throw at you. And sometimes teaching and coaching is a profession where you don't get to see those outcomes. And my encouragement to all the teachers and coaches that may or may not listen to this is just the fact that, hey, keep doing the right things and keep doing what you're doing, because sometimes you don't get to see that end product, but the end product takes care of itself later on in life. It might be when that person turns 30 or 35, when they have kids of their own, they're like, holy cow, I'm teaching and coaching just like my old high school coach used to do it with me, because they made such an impact.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That was very well said, and I think that if everybody out there, all know in the day-to-day grind of whether it's coaching or teaching, sometimes we get lost in the in the weeds, and we don't always remember what we just said there. But I think if people can remember that and get themselves refocused on what's really important, it helps us all to end up in a good place. So let's wrap up here, Nick. I want to just touch on your Snow Valley experience. You talked a little bit about how you got in there in the first place, but can you talk a little bit more about just exactly what that means to you, what you get out of it, and why it's been such an important part of your coaching career?
Oh, it's been phenomenal. And the greatest thing about when I go to Snow Valley is I know that all the people that go to coach there truly care about the game and truly care about kids. It's not just a thing where, I'm just going to put this on my resume because it looks good or whatnot. They will share anything they have. All the coaches that attend there, whether they're a Division I basketball coach, an NBA coach, it does not matter. Titles don't matter. Egos are thrown out the door. It's so phenomenal just to see the brotherhood of sharing and information. I mean, I learn so much when I go attend there every year that I feel blessed just to attend and be a part of it. I always tell this story, like the greatest thing, Don Showalter, just a mentor of mine. I'll remember this forever. Here's a guy that's won gold medals, been to the state tournament. But one of my first clinics that he asked me to lead a long time ago when I was a little younger coach, I was leading it and I was nervous and leading other coaches as well. But he was there sitting and kind of taking some notes. And so I go afterwards and, hey, how did I do? Whatnot. And I'm like, what are you writing down? And he just said, hey, I was just writing down some little nuggets that you said because I kind of liked how you said it. And for that experience to have a guy that I respect and who knows way more about the game of basketball than I ever will, just to be taking something from what I did, it just showed me that, if someone like that can continually learn all the time, then there's no way that I should ever stop learning or ever stop growing, because there's no way I'll ever know it all. And so I can always get better and try to pick people's brains, like Greg White, I'm always trying to pick his brain, and some of the other guys. Matt Hattie's a good friend of mine, Jeff Steines. So those guys, I'm just trying to steal from them all the chances that I can to improve myself. So that's kind of what it means to me.
Yeah, I think that's something, again, that as you get older as a coach, I think you appreciate more the ability to be able to share and converse and, again, to use your word, steal from other coaches and the great things that other people are doing, because, again, none of us out there are really reinventing the wheel. Sometimes, it gets repackaged in a slightly different way, or to Coach Showalter's point, somebody phrases it slightly differently, or they take an idea that maybe you've expressed to your team in one way and they're able to condense it or say it in a way that just becomes more clear. And, I know Greg is very good at that. He shares some things, like one of the things that I got which made me want to go up to him and talk to him after he talked at the USA Basketball Coaches Clinic was, the better player owns the mistake. And that was something that, I think I've had that idea in my head. I've seen it sort of executed in that way, but to hear him say it in that such a succinct and clear way made it just easy to understand exactly what he meant. And I just think that when you go and you have an opportunity to learn, and again, we've had the chance to talk to a bunch of guys that have worked at Snow Valley. We obviously had Coach Showalter on as well. It just sounds like a phenomenal place in terms of not just the basketball that the kids are getting, but to a man, every coach that we've talked to has just been raved about the other people that have been there from a coaching standpoint, and just how they've filled notebooks with things that they've learned from just sitting and watching other coaches teach and coach. And again, it's not like basketball is not being reinvented all the time. It's just, again, people are taking what they know and repackaging it and doing it in a way that best helps kids to learn. And when one coach can learn from another, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, no, and yeah, just like, in teaching too, you're not reinventing reading or writing or anything like that, but different ways to present, information. And the kids are changing. So if you can take something another coach said and did in a way, and it applies to your kids and they get it, man, well, why not take those ideas? And that's what I think is another special thing about Snow Valley is these coaches that go there are willing to share. I think sometimes you get an idea or well, I'm not gonna share with you. I want to keep this. This is mine, or whatever. Well, at that place, and that's why it's so special too. Is if you ask for something, you're gonna get it times 10. You're gonna get that notebook full of notes that you can take, and everyone's so willing to share. And that's the brotherhood that comes with that place. That if I call anybody at any time, I know they're gonna return my phone call right away, and we could talk about more than just basketball. We could talk about life. If something's going on, because of that relationship that is built there of trust and realizing that, hey, we're all in this together. I just find it phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really a testament to what Coach Showalter's been able to do there, that just the quality of individuals that attend. And, again, we've only had the opportunity to talk to a very small group of you guys that have, been there for years and years and years. But just that small slice, that small cross-section that we've been fortunate enough to be able to have on the podcast, I feel like it's just been a group of tremendous guys that, to your point, are an open book in terms of, hey, if you want something, if you need something, if you want to pick my brain, if you want an idea, we're more than willing to share those ideas with you. And again, what's one of the miracles, I think, of the internet age is now we can all reach out and be able to have relationships with people all over the country. And, a lot of times it's more difficult to have, the same relationship maybe with the coach that's down the road from you, because you got to compete with them day in, day out. Yeah. But when you're in Iowa and somebody else is in Arkansas, or you're in Iowa and somebody else is in California, there's obviously nothing to worry about territorially in terms of, this guy coming back and, trying to beat me. So it's just a great thing that's out there for people to be able to connect. And, I'm super excited to continue to learn more about it. We're going to eventually hopefully talk to Coach Showalter and see if we can't get out there for a week to become a part of, just to be able to experience it for ourselves. So, Nick, we can't thank you enough for jumping on with us tonight. Before we get out of here, if you wouldn't mind sharing out how people can get in touch with you, maybe your Twitter handle, email if you want to share that, and then if there's anything else that we didn't hit on that you want to leave for our audience before we get out of here, you can go ahead and share that as well.
Yeah, I'll just throw out my Twitter handle. It's at Coach Schauf. That's SCHAUF. And feel free to reach out and connect. Again, I'm an open book. Anything I can add to anybody's program or help in any way, I love to do that. I love to share. But hopefully, if you reach out to me, understand that I'm probably going to ask you some questions as well, because I'm going to learn from what you have done and the experiences you've had in life as well. And one last thing to leave with is I'm just really blessed to be in the position that I am, teaching and coaching, because I think it's one of the most honorable positions there is to really have that ability to influence younger people and hopefully just kind of change the world a little bit and make young men and the kids in my classroom better. I think that just helps our overall world. And I also appreciate you guys for having me on. I don't feel like I'm the caliber of coach that a lot of the other guys that I've listened to on your podcast are, but I just appreciate your guys' time and your willingness to share this little nugget of information I can help with, and I look forward to continuing the relationship that we have right now. So,
absolutely, Nick. We can't thank you enough. Again, you've just been a wealth of information. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and we really appreciate you jumping on. Again, to us, it's not really about, again, who's a big name or who's this or who's that. We're just looking for good people that are willing to share and want to help us grow the game of basketball, which is really what it's all about. So, again, we want to thank you for jumping on with us, and to everyone out there, we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Hello, Hoop Heads. This is Alan Stein Jr. My new book, Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, will be available from all major book retailers on January 8th. Raise Your Game takes a rare peek behind the curtain and shows you what the top coaches and players in the game do during the unseen hours. I share their routines, rituals, and habits, as well as proven strategies that you can implement with your team immediately. If you want to maximize your coaching impact and influence, order your copy today at raiseyourgamebook.com. And in the spirit of the holidays, if you're interested in purchasing multiple copies for your coaching staff, team, or program, I am offering several bonuses, like a 40% discount, signed copies, and a private video call with your team. But you'll have to place your order before Christmas. Once again, go to raiseyourgamebook.com for everything you need.
If you're looking for a great way to spend the holidays playing some basketball, please join us at one of our Head Start Basketball holiday camps on December 27th and 28th, 2018. We'll have a camp at Hoop Guru Courthouse in Hinckley and also at St. Paschal Baylon School in Highland Heights. The Head Start Basketball holiday camps will emphasize the fundamentals of basketball with individual attention given to each camper. You'll improve your basketball skills and have a ton of fun at the Head Start Basketball holiday camp. To register or get more information, please visit our website, www.headstartbasketball.com. Head Start Basketball's Player Development Academy offers Cleveland area players a unique opportunity to improve their basketball skills. Regardless of a player's age, skill level, or position, training with Head Start Basketball will elevate your game to the next level. Do you want to improve your ball handling, become a better shooter, or develop into a more skilled, confident player? Our Academy classes offer training that's designed to do just that. Our training sessions are innovative and will have you learning skills that are transferable to actual games. We have 4 different class skill levels for boys and girls, ages 4 and up. All Player Development Academy classes will be held at the Strongsville Recreation Center. For more information or to get registered, please visit www.headstartbasketball.com. Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, brought to you by Head Start Basketball.